I'm joined now by Peter McGuire from XM in our Sydney CBD studio. Peter, firstly, can you just give us the basics? Who is likely to win, firstly, the House of Reps and secondly, the Senate?
At the present time, I think it's going to be very much even Steven. There is consensus out there that we're just going to stay at the status quo. It's a hard one to pick because there's so many moving parts, and we've never really had a president like President Trump before. I'm not prepared to put my flag in the sand and say who's going to get up, but I think at the present, you'd have to say it'll stay the status quo.
Really? So you're actually picking that the Democrats won't actually retake the House, which I thought was the conventional wisdom.
Well, I think it's, I haven't been following, to every single essence of it. But, I'm probably erring on that side a little bit. I think we're not going to, it's going to be a very interesting playbook come next week.
Well, let's assume that you're right. Let's assume that the Republicans do quite well and they maintain control of the Congress. What does that mean for markets more generally?
I think overall it'll be a strengthening of the, naturally the Dow. I think the stock markets will rally, US dollar will rally, and that's the reasoning. I think there's an overall feeling on Main Street that, like it or not, unemployment numbers are at nearly record lows. The economy has, really boomed in the last 2 years. If you're looking at the structure of the Dow, the US dollar came under massive pressure and now it's recovered quite significantly back to around about that 96.5 for the US dollar index. So overall, I think Main Street's feeling, fairly joyful. Crude prices are under control, inflation's okay. So yeah, you've got a booming economy, Adam.
Yeah. What particular reform items are on the Republicans' agenda that might affect the economy? Because, of course, if they maintain control of the Congress, then they'll have a good chance of actually getting them through their parliament. But if the Democrats win, then they'll basically have no chance, I imagine, of kind of getting any reform through over the past 2 years. So my question is, what's kind of standing out on the horizon as something that could happen if Trump does well?
Well, again, you've got what's happening with trade, what's happening as far as the other side. The overall picture from the US economy, are we seeing, so many different moving parts in the sense of the Iran sanctions? You're looking at where President Trump prepared to play on trade, what's happening with, it's a week by week proposition on so many different fronts. I look at it holistically, and I think overall you've got a very strong market. As far as different components of it, I think you've just got to study the numbers and study those particular policies and see where it's going to play.
On trade, which you just mentioned then, Peter. So we heard reports, obviously, that the president was going to follow through with his third round of tariffs on $250-odd billion of Chinese imports. Has that story kind of died now, or that's still in prospect of happening?
Well, when you're thinking about what President came out in the last 24 hours to 36 and saying that there have been positive talks with Xi, then you're looking at what happened overnight with the strength of that Dow. You saw that pressure come off the US dollar. It was probably a little bit of profit taking, and there was a feel-good story. But put your mind back a couple of weeks ago on what's happened as far as the Dow being sold off, S&P, NASDAQ and so on. It's just whipsawing at the moment. Everyone's got their own opinion. Are we overboard, or is it too strong? Are we going to see a recession in 19 or early 20? What's happening with the Fed? So, when you take it all and you understand it, it's a feel-good. Every 36 hours you've got a different market direction, Adam.
Can we just move over to currencies briefly? We saw the Australian dollar shoot up above 72 cents overnight. That was certainly welcome news for anyone going overseas at the moment for a holiday. But this wasn't driven by domestic factors, right? It was driven by rumours that the Chinese government might be announcing another round of stimulus.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's wonderful for Australia as far as exports. The other side, of course, is that they need to keep the pressure down. They've got a renminbi that's nearly at 7. You've got a stock market that's hemorrhaged, and 2018 will be a very sad year for Chinese equities. So they've got to keep the momentum going forward. There's no doubt that stimulus will be there, and it plays well for us. And there's the other side, of course, is with that US dollar coming off, we got 2 hits at it. And it's been a very strong, 24 hours. Great to go long.
Yeah, just in terms of the outlook for the Fed, how many more rate rises are kind of in the bag, so to speak, over the next 6 months? It's 1 or 2, and is there any kind of way that if the market falls further that they might change their mind about those rate hikes?
Well, I think you're going to be around that 2 number, but then again, it's uncertainty as far as, inflation numbers, what's happening leading up. If we see a big correction in the equity markets by January or February, then that's possibly going to impact. And if you've got crude prices under control from an inflation side, Adam, then that's going to be a positive. Rate rises, possibly only one. So, it's very much a work in progress. And these sort of, tabled mindsets from the Fed, it's still also understanding that looking at the value of that US dollar, seeing what's happening on the domestic front, but internationally as well with euro and so on, it just seems to be a very much, wait and see approach.
Well, just finally, just on the euro and the Eurozone more generally, we saw the Bank of England kept rates on hold overnight, I believe. Did that surprise you? Because it was my understanding that inflation was reasonably high there and the expectation was that they would be normalising along with the Fed.
Well, that's right. We expected that, but the other side, of course, was that, as where you see the euro, where you see the UK pound, and where you see that whole zone, but the talk as far as Brexit, what the impacts there, it was welcomed by the market, and you saw that, the hit up to the upside for the pound. Again, nice for a trader's perspective. It's been very, very solid over that last 12 to 18 hours.
Pete, thank you so much for that update. That's all we have time for.
Thank you very much.